Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada. Continuing our discussion on Īśopaniṣad, we will now proceed to mantra 2. Kurvaneva karmani jijivishekshatam samaha evam tvainanyate asti na karma lipyate nare. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way. For that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. There is no alternative to this way for man. So the mantra is referring to the previous one. So the previous mantra talked about the Īśopaniṣad consciousness, which is the understanding that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord and one only uses what's been set aside as their quota. So when the mantra says working in that way, essentially what it is saying is working with that consciousness. Working with that consciousness that all I have is the right to enjoy what is set aside as my quota, while at the same time understanding that even that quota does not belong to me. It belongs to Krishna. And what's the result of working in that way? That this sort of work will not bind to the law of karma. So what is the law of karma? It manifests in repeated birth. It manifests in enjoyment and suffering. So one who is working in the Īśopaniṣad consciousness will not be subject to the suffering or even the enjoyment that comes with the non-Īśopaniṣad consciousness. And there is no other way. Right? So essentially, the mantra is saying that this is the only way. Right, so another point that is made to this mantra is that when somebody hears the first mantra, that the Lord has set aside your quota, if you exceed that quota, you will suffer. And if you, but at the same time, the Lord has set aside your quota. So one person might say, well, since the Lord has already set aside my quota, there's no reason for me to engage in any kind of work. So let me just give up everything and only be satisfied with the quota that is already allocated to me. So this, as we know in the Bhagavad Gita, is presented as Falgu Vairagya, as false renunciation. Now another person might say that let me give up work because it clearly says that any kind of work has a binding effect. So in order to free myself from that binding effect, let me get rid of the cause completely. So let me not work at all. Another aspect of Falgu Vairagya. This verse gives us the correct way. That don't give up work, but do the work in the consciousness that it is all ultimately belonging to the Lord. Right? And this you will recognize as the concept of Nishkam Karma, which is one of the key aspects of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Right from the 2nd chapter all the way till the 18th chapter, Krishna develops on this notion of Nishkam Karma, like working without fruitive desires. Right? And one might say that, well, maybe this is one option, are the other options? But the mantra says no. There is no way around working in the Īśopaniṣad consciousness. So, analysis of the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So, in the first paragraph, he talks about karma bandhan, the binding effect of karma that perpetuates transmigration, and we'll speak a little bit more about each of these aspects. Here, in the second paragraph, he talks about the glories of the human life because it offers liberation through akarma. And then the way to practice and attain that akarma is taking shelter of the Vedas. And what the Vedas tell us is to bring God into our life of self-consciousness. The flip side is, if you do not do that, everything is in vain. Right? Srila Prabhupada is expanding on this statement, there is no other way. And finally, he talks about making all forms of altruisms nishkam karma. And he speaks about it because sometimes there is a confusion of altruism being nishkam karma. But it need not be. If somebody may practice charity, but they may practice charity for glorification, or they may practice charity out of fear. So it is not really, it may look like altruism, but it is still sakam karma. Real altruism happens when God is brought in the center. So this mantra obviously talks a lot about the nature of the work, and karma is a topic that we discussed extensively in Bhagavad Gita. So here we'll just talk about it very, very briefly. Right? So karma as a word has many meanings that are contextually relevant. So karma may mean activities. Do your karma as a verb. Do your activities, which may be any kinds of activities. Like especially in India, people sometimes say, I'm doing my karma. Right? So essentially whatever they're doing, they say that's my karma. Second understanding is that it refers only to pious activities, which are activities that are given in the scriptures. Third understanding of the meaning of karma is that it is actually the reactions to activities. Sometimes when people will say that I'm suffering my own karma. So in that case, what they're saying is I'm suffering the reactions to my previous activities. And fourth is the law of karma. The law of karma which states that you reap as you sow. So one may say that what can we do? This is the way karma works. Right? Essentially what they're talking about is the action and the reaction together. So in this mantra, the third context is used. When the karma is used, it is used in the context of reactions. That when it says that you can work without karma, it means that you can live without reactions. So when karma is pointing to reactions, akarma is pointing to without reactions. Now, because of the different ways that karma is interpreted, when akarma is used to point to working without reactions, somebody might interpret the first meaning of karma, which is activities. And they may say, when Krishna is saying akarma, he says that do not work. Right? So in that case, they are taking a different meaning of karma. That wherever the Vedas says akarma, the Vedas themselves are saying, because karma means works, akarma means do not work. This is the same confusion that Arjuna had, and he asked these questions in the 3rd and the 6th chapter. Right? Whereas when akarma is used, it is used in the third context, that is work without reactions. Now one may wonder that if all this confusion is coming because the word karma has multiple meanings, then wouldn't it be better for the Vedas to use different words for these different meanings? For instance, in the third category, reactions to karma, they might say that it's karmafal. That's also a meaning that's used, but they might say that that's the only word that describes reaction, karmafal. So that would, one would assume that would clear any confusion. The reality is that the confusion is not because of the words, but the words reflect the confusion. Right? So the Vedas follow the state of the mind and then clarify it. And they don't really create that. So factually speaking, people are confused between what does giving up work mean. Does it mean giving up the work, or does it mean working in a way that one gives up the reactions? Because that confusion exists in the people, it is reflected in the way that the word is used. Right? So if it was as simple as redefining karma to karmafal, Vedas are perfect. They would have done that a long time ago. And also, to some extent, this is also an opportunity for the Vedas to clarify. When they reflect this way of thinking, they are also getting an opportunity to clarify. Right? So the takeaway point is that the akarma that is used in this mantra is actually reflecting to work without reactions. It is not implying to not working. So further understanding of karma. So now if you take the first karma, which is the activity karma, the verb doing activities, we can understand that it can be broken into these three categories. So sukarma, these are pious activities, activities done according to the scriptures. Su means good, elevating. Vikarma is activities that are done ignoring the Vedic injunctions. Right? And akarma is work without reactions. So the first two qualify karma as an activity. The su karma and the vikarma, they're adjectives, or factually speaking, they're adverbs, because karma is a verb, so they qualify work as an activity. And the third is working without reactions. Right? So essentially the qualifies karma that appears as working with reactions, and karma is working without reactions. Or karma more precisely is the reactions to work. So karma is then no reactions to work. Right? So now we have a high level understanding of karma. Like I said, it's a refresher. We have done this in fair bit of details, and in Bhagavad Gita, three kinds of karma: sukarma, vikarma, akarma. And akarma essentially is pointing to work without reactions. Then the mantra says one can live for hundreds of years. Right? So to understand this, I'll relate a story that you probably have heard in the past about a sadhu that goes into a city, and being a sadhu, he is approached by different people asking for benedictions. So he's approached by a butcher, he's approached by a prince, and he's approached by a devotee, and they all say, "Dear sadhu, please give me some benediction." So to the butcher, the sadhu says, "I give you this benediction that you may die right away." To the prince, the sadhu says that, "May you live a long life." And to the devotee, he says that, "May you neither live nor die." Now, why does he give different benedictions to different people? And as you can guess, it is because of the way they are living their lives. So the butcher is committing many acts of violence, killing animals. So every day that he lives, he accumulates more sinful karma, which means there is more suffering in store for him. So if he dies right away, then at least that accrual of sinful reactions will stop. So in a way, this is a benediction that the sadhu has given the butcher, that may your sinful activities stop right now, may you die right away. Now, in case of the prince is, as part of his princely duties, he is killing many animals. And because of that, ahimsa, there is suffering in store for him, much like a butcher. But the difference is that the butcher is also suffering in this own life. It said one takes on a profession like this because of past sinful activities. So while the butcher is living, he is suffering. And because he is committing sinful activities, he will continue to suffer. But the prince is different. Because he had performed pious activities in the past, he is enjoying now. But the sadhu knows that because of all the impious activities he is doing, he will suffer later on. So the sadhu, out of compassion, is saying that there is suffering that is inevitably in store for you. But right now you are enjoying. So may you enjoy for as long as you can. And so he says, may you have a long life. And for the devotee, he says, may you neither live nor die. And because for a devotee, they are happy either way. If they die, they continue the service in another body. If they live, they do the service. Also, what it means is that even if the devotee lives for hundreds of years, the devotee is not going to accrue any pious or sinful reactions. Right? So whether he lives for 100 years or he lives for 1 year, it's the same. It's like you put money in a bank account and it's not earning any interest. Whether you keep it for 1 day or 100 years, it's going to be the same. And so that's the situation of a devotee. Right? So this is what the mantra means when it says that you can aspire to live for hundreds of years. Which means that if you work in the Īśopaniṣad consciousness, that work is a karma. Which means that it will have no reactions. Which means that even if you live for hundreds of years, it is not going to create additional burden from you in terms of future enjoyment or suffering. It means that whether you work for 1 day or whether you work for 100 days or 100 years, because the work does not have any reactions, it is all the same. Just like keeping money in the account, 1 day or 1 year or 100 years, the money is still the same. It does not accrue any interest. So, akarma, no reactions. So, if you work in the Īśopaniṣad consciousness, no reaction. So, you live for hundreds of years, no reactions. Okay. Then finally the mantra says there is no other way. Right? So this is what is known as pragmatic logic, practical aspect. Right? So analogy is, one is at the top floor of a building, and then he says to ask some person that is there a way to exit the building, and he's at the top floor. So one man might say that you can either take the stairs or you can take the elevator. Now the third person might come and say, but there is another way out of the building, which is that you can jump out of the window. Now from the perspective of pure logic, yes, it's an option. That yes, the person can exit the building by jumping out of the window, but from a practical perspective, it's a ludicrous option. Because the person will jump out of the window and die. So obviously when the person is saying I want to exit the building, he wants to exit as is. He doesn't want to die and exit. Right? So similarly, when the mantra says that there is no other way, it means that there is no other reasonable way. Right? One might say that I can live a life with sakarma, with vikarma. So they might say, I can. There are other ways. How come you're saying that there is no other ways? But there are no reasonable ways. Because if you live a life with vikarma or sukarma, you will still be continuously implicated. And from the Upanishadic perspective, this is madness, like jumping out of the building. So the only reasonable way out of this conundrum of living a long life is Īśopaniṣad, that work with that consciousness. So we'll do a little bit deeper dive into the purports by Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada first talks about how karma bandhan perpetuates transmigration, right? And I'll speak briefly about it because we'll see that there is a lot of overlap between Īśopaniṣad and Bhagavad Gita, as you would expect. You should not expect different parts of the scriptures to speak different things. And a lot of points that Srila Prabhupada makes, he has made them in the Bhagavad Gita and the Nectar of Devotion and Nectar of Instruction. So we are very familiar with it, so I'll speak briefly about it. And of course, as always, I recommend you to read the purports carefully. So karma bandhan perpetuates transmigration because the soul does not die. Soul is eternal. So for the soul, the experience of death is unnatural, right? It happens due to karma bandhan. Right? This whole attachment to the body, attachment to one's way of living, that is because of karma bandhan, means bondage of work. And if one happens to perform sinful activities, then the bondage is even more severe. Then what is the way out of this binding work? So human life offers the opportunity for a karma. Right? So the way out is a karma, and the opportunity to execute a karma is only given to the human form of life. Right? So in the other forms of life, there is actually not even karma. It's not a karma, but there is no karma also. They simply live out their past karma and gradually get elevated. But in the human form of life, one has the opportunity to perform a karma, sukarma, vikarma. Right? So when one deliberately exercises their option and executes a karma, then they're free from the karma bandhan that perpetuates transmigration. How do you know how to execute a karma? The Vedas tell us. So the instructions of Īśopaniṣad, they're expanded in Bhagavad Gita, right? So all these tell us the philosophy behind a karma that we just discussed, how to execute a karma. And that is why it is available to the human form, because only at that form you can read the Vedas, take instructions and act upon them. In the fourth paragraph, Srila Prabhupada says that begin by bringing God into a life of sense gratification. Right? So here Prabhupada is preaching to his audience, knowing that the majority of this audience are living a life of sense gratification, and for them to go from that stage to complete detachment is a big jump. So he talks about a practical way that in your life, bring God in. The Prabhupada says, there is no harm in being a family man or an altruist or a socialist, a communist, a nationalist or a humanitarian, provided one executes his activity in relationship with Shavasya. So when one becomes a humanitarian, then one helps the other people with the understanding that they are also related to the Supreme Lord as he himself is related. Right? Otherwise, one who is doing humanitarian activities will develop a God complex, saying that I am helping them, they are dependent on me, I am superior, I am their, I redeem their distress, so I am God and they are dependent, right? So that's why, unless there is the God-centered conception, all these isms, Prabhupada says, will simply be wasted. So they may look very attractive. Somebody might say, I'm running this large charitable organization, I help so many people, etc. But unless there is God over there, they will ultimately devolve into either sukarma or vikarma. And the current day and age, mostly vikarma. So Prabhupada makes the point in the opposite, that without God everything is vain. The material life causes one to fall to the lower species. Right? However, in the spirit of Ishavasya, one may wish to live for hundreds of years. And in the final paragraph, Prabhupada again makes the point that he was making in the fourth paragraph, that make all altruisms into nishkam karma. Right? So developing this consciousness of that if I'm helping somebody, then I'm simply a means to an end. So the conclusion of the mantra is that it shows how the learned persons can live his whole life performing daily and periodic activities by renouncing doership, desires, and the result of actions. Right? So these are the three components that distinguish akarma from other forms of karma. That I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, and I am the source of these activities. So daily activities are nitya karma, periodic are naimitya karma. So when perform these activities, but with this Ishavasya consciousness. Prescribed action should be done independently for results, but one should never give up those prescribed activities which assist in the cultivation of knowledge. So one should not give up activities thinking they are troublesome, but at the same time one should not do the activities only for the purpose of the results. So then why do we do the activities? Partly for sustenance and partly to increase one's realization. So cultivation of knowledge here is Vigyan. That whatever we know, when we perform activities in a mood of detachment, we begin to internalize it and realize it. Even the Jnani searching for Brahman should engage in his duties until he achieves the goal of his life in the form of full realization of Brahman. Right? So this is the Kimutva Nyaya. That one might say that my goal is Brahman realization. In Brahman realization there is inactivity. So one might say my goal is Brahman realization in which there is no activity. So should I start practicing no activity from now? And what the mantra says, no. Even if a person is exclusively focusing on Brahman, where the goal is inactivity, the means to reach that is activity. But without a desire to enjoy the results of the activity. So this brings us to the last point, that only by the Ishavasham consciousness this is possible. Right? So only when one understands that the Lord owns everything, He has set aside things for our quota, and then we use the quota understanding that they have been set aside for us and they actually belong to the Lord. So this notion of doership, this notion of desiring to enjoy the results of the action, they automatically go away. There is no other way. So that brings us to the end of mantra 2. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.